Good evening. It's a pleasure and an honor to be back at St. Monica, especially with this very sacred, special time of the parish mission. And I'll say more about that in a moment. A few years ago, I was giving a parish mission in another part of the country, and I was just beginning Saturday evening, and I was in the church preparing on my own, when a young guy came in, sort of mid to late 40s, good-looking, well-built young man, and he said, "Father, any chance of confession?" So I looked at the time, it was good, and I said, "Yes, come along to the reconciliation room." We went into the room, and to my surprise, he sat down and burst into tears. So I waited a little bit, and then he sort of choked out, "Father, I've done something terrible. I've done something about which I am so embarrassed. In fact, not only embarrassed, I'm shocked at what I did, and I'm afraid at what I did, because I wonder if what I did is irreparable." And he started weeping again. So waiting just a little bit, I said to him, "Do you mind if I ask you a few questions?" He said, "Sure, just to put your life into perspective. So tell me about your life as it is now." And he said, "Well, up to just recently, what happened is 1 or 2 nights ago, I had too much to drink. I got into an argument with my wife, and I was physically abusive." And he wept again. And he said, "Father, I've never done anything like that in my life before, and I can still see the shock on her face." So I said, "Go back and tell me about your life as it is now." He said, "Up to what happened just a few nights ago, I thought we were happily married. We've got 2 children, I've got a successful business. About 4 or 5 years ago, I became involved in my sports club. And over these last few years, I've taken over more of the running of it until now I'm totally in charge and I own it. But my life seems somehow out of control. I seem overwhelmed, I'm short-tempered, I'm hitting the bottle more than I used to, and it's as if everything is awry. I've lost a sense of control in my life." So I said, as awful as what happened 2 or 3 nights ago with the alcohol, the argument, and the violence, I don't think that's the issue. I think your issue is adultery. "Adultery, Father?" He looked at me shocked in his eyes. I said, "Yes. I think your issue is you are having an adulterous affair with your sports club." His eyes opened, his eyes were about this big. And in that sort of shocked look, I could see him dotting the I's and crossing the T's and making the connection. And he said, after a moment, he said, "Father, you're right. I'm having an adulterous affair with my sports club." There's a connection between that guy and this woman in today's gospel. The scribes and the Pharisees must have been watching that couple for weeks, for days, watching when they met, where they met, how long they met. And on this one particular day, they charged into the room and caught them in the very act of adultery. Amazing, miraculously, the guy jumps up and disappears out through the window, and as usual, leaves the woman carrying the blame. But what's new? So the scribes and the Pharisees grabbed this poor woman, probably grabbed a sheet around her for her nakedness, through the streets into the temple where Jesus is teaching. And they say, "Teacher, we've caught this woman," no guy, "we've caught this woman in the very act of committing adultery. Now, according to Moses and the law, she should be stoned. What do you say?" They'd actually trapped the young couple so as to trap him. They were going to stone him by stoning her. Jesus, not a word, doesn't say a word. He just bends down and begins to write in the sand. Would it shock you if I said most of us in this church this evening are guilty of adultery? What's the definition of adultery? Unfaithfulness, two-timing, infidelity. What's the root of the word adultery? Tarnish, spoil, pollute. Many of us, perhaps most of us in this church, are guilty of an adulterous affair with work, with business, with busyness, with this preoccupation of trying to stay forever young, an adulterous affair with our body, to have body beautiful and ultra fit, an affair with social media, with money, an affair with internet, TV, and God help you, even perhaps an affair with the news. But every one of us here is caught. And what does this affair, what does this unfaithfulness do to us? It takes us away from who we are. It pulls us away from who we are. It takes us away from the truth of who we are. It drags us from the divine in us. It spoils our primary relationships. And it brings discord into our life. It throws our whole life off balance. So no wonder so many of us are struggling with unhappiness in our lives. No wonder so many of us are depressed, or having to medicate or take a drink or too much. No wonder so many of us are sad and are feeling overwhelmed by life. It's clear. It's obvious. We're out of step. We're out of balance. But the great news is that being caught in the act of adultery, or recognizing our adultery, can be a moment of truth. It can be a reality check. It can be a shot across the bow, a warning. It can be a moment of grace. It can be. Let's go back to that woman. She's standing there with clutching the sheet around her, and they are pounding the same thing. What must we do? What must we do? What must we do with her? He won't answer. And she's there, she's horribly embarrassed. She's shamed. She's shocked. She's alone. She's frightened that if they get their way, that's the end of her. And what does Jesus do? He just bends down and he writes in the sand. But they keep pestering him there with their righteousness. What must we do? So he stands up and he says, fine. If you want to keep the law of Moses, fine, stone her. However, let the one without sin be the first to throw a stone. And then he bends down again and continues writing in the ground, in the sand. What is he writing? Some scripture scholars say he was writing down their adulteries. And so you can see what was happening, because he didn't answer them. He wasn't engaged by them. He wasn't hooked by them. He just wrote. You can imagine these righteous leaders looking down, and my God, there they see him writing down their adultery, because we're all guilty of it. And when they see their sin written down in the sand for everyone to see, they realize it's not only the woman, it's them as well. And they begin to slink away one by one, starting with the eldest. And so he's left, just with this woman clutching the sheet, highly embarrassed and shamed, but suddenly realizing what her life is about. Suddenly realizing that guy she was with wasn't worth his weight in salt because of leaving her alone. Suddenly seeing her life suddenly in reality, in stark reality. And he says to her, "Woman, where are they? Has no one accused you?" "No one, sir." Just look at the change. Look at the change. Instead of that pounding, shouting, jeering, "No one, sir." And you can almost see Jesus forcing her to look at him. Forcing her to look. And she looks up in the midst of her shame, and there she sees his gaze. Total acceptance. Total love. Total compassion and forgiveness. Well, then, neither do I forgive you. Go, live, and sin no more. Beautiful. Beautiful. So how's your Lent been? Got 2 weeks to go. What's happened to it? How's it been? If your Lent has been anything like mine, I start on Ash Wednesday with the greatest of intentions, a long list of things I'm going to do, and by now I'm afraid they've fizzled out and I'm back to square one again. So some of you might be in the same boat. However, no matter how your Lent has been, whether it's been wonderful or whether it's been rather disappointing and typical to the best of our intentions, the great news is a mission is Lent within Lent. A mission is a Lent within Lent. A mission is the opportunity for all of us to redeem our Lent. To redeem our Lent. So come to this mission. As Monsignor said, starts tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, 7 o'clock in the evening here in the church, just an hour and a bit, and a shorter version after the 12:10 Mass each day. Come to the mission. Just make some space in your schedule. Cancel something. And let's take a spotlight. Let's look at our lives. Let's see if we can identify that infidelity, that two-timing that's going on. Let's see if this mission can be a wake-up call for us. Let's see if it can be a moment of grace for us. What's so interesting for me is that woman caught in adultery brought her to Jesus. Isn't that amazing? The woman caught in adultery, that most awful, traumatic experience, was what brought her to Jesus. Come to the mission and let's see if there can't be some of that same grace in our life. So going back to that guy that came to confession, after lots of periods of silence and quiet, I eventually gave him absolution. As I did so, I looked at him. Something had shifted. Something had shifted. Because what do you think Jesus is writing in the sand for us? He's not writing our sins. No. Jesus is writing in the sand of our life your name. He knows each one of you by name. Jesus is writing in the sand of your life your name. And you know what I think he's also writing? That beautiful part of the first reading from Isaiah, where Isaiah says, "Behold, I'm doing something new. It's already bubbling up. Can't you see it?" Jesus is writing your name in the sands of your life, and he's also writing the new thing he wants to do in your life. So I saw this newness in this guy after I gave him absolution. And he said to me when we finished, "Father, do you think I could give myself a penance?" I said, "Sure. What do you suggest would be appropriate for yourself for this confession?" He said, and you could just see the change. I mean, red eyes from all his crying, swollen red eyes, face all bloated, but there was a strength there. Despite everything else, there was a new strength. There was something new. He said, "I'm going to give up alcohol. I'm going to divorce. I'm going to resign from the sports club. I'm going to come back to the church. I've been rusty. I'm going to take myself off to counseling. I should have done it ages ago. And I'm going to go now to my wife and apologize and ask her forgiveness." And he stood up and gave me a hug and walked out a different man. A new man. Come to the mission. 3 nights. And let's see what Jesus wants to write, yes, in the sands of your life, but more importantly, what he wants to write in your heart, on your heart. And it's going to be, this is what Jesus is going to say and write on your heart: "I want you to be free. I want you to be healed. I want you to be happy. I want you too to be able to go and live your life to the full." I would say Jesus would take again a part of that beautiful Isaiah text and he would say, "I want to turn the desert into flowing water in you. I want to take the deadness in you and change it to new life." Thank you.